People are born different, different in their appearance, temperament, abilities. So the conditions and efforts for their education must be different also. To bring this simple truth to life, specialists suggest a new method, inclusive education. Inclusive education was first implemented in Armenia in 2000 with the goal of involving children with disabilities in the environment of their peers. The non-governmental organization Bridge of Hope is convinced that children with disabilities can learn with other children in public schools. First, we implemented this type of education method for one child, and by the end of 2000, we were optimistic about starting inclusive education. In 2001, together with the Ministry of Education and Science, we started the inclusive education program at school number 27. The program allowed for development of individual education plans for children having difficulties with their studies and to organize their schoolwork by those plans. At first, we were confused by the concept, as in the past, children needing special education or children with disabilities attended special schools. There was a developed net of special schools, and heated debates were on. What was wrong with having special schools for children? However, international experience had shown that for acceptance into normal society, a child's inclusion is more successful when we start at an early age. The earlier children interact with people with disabilities, the more accepting they become. They accept the world the way it is. We saw that inclusive education was not only for children with physical limitations. It is for all children considered as less intelligence or this and that. We label them and that's it. We give them a satisfactory mark and send them ahead. We commit a felony. We become accomplices to those who play with the fate of these children. The Mukhtar Sabastatsi Educational Complex is one of 5 schools in Armenia where inclusive education has been implemented through the initiative of Bridge of Hope, with funding from international organizations and in partnership with state organizations. Since September of 2004, 3 children with special needs, Nona, Khachik, and Eric, have studied in the 1st grade of the primary school. Nona and Khachik have problems associated with Down syndrome. Some children need additional attention, care, and tenderness. Their fellow students recognize this from the teacher's attitude. Three months have passed, and Nona and Khachik study with the rest of the class. They have adjusted, but still have a need for special conditions. Only by persistent education methods, friendly interaction, and the use of games can it be possible to develop their mental abilities and skills for living an independent life. To take care of the educational needs for such children, the Bridge of Hope has provided furniture and teaching materials for a special classroom in each of the 5 schools. New positions have also been established, that of a specialized teacher and social worker. I have worked at the Mukhtar Sabastatsi complex for 10 months as a specialized teacher, but this is the 2nd year that the Bridge of Hope project has been in operation. As a special teacher, I take part in the classes and assist the children. After their lessons, I conduct individual lessons with them in the Bridge of Hope room. When they decided to implement this project in the school, placing 3 children with special needs in one of the classes, the reaction was very strong. This came mainly from the parents. They were not ready to accept it. The role of the social worker is to create, in that small environment, an atmosphere that allows everybody to be aware of the project and ready to accept children with special needs. Eric studies in the same first grade. He has been diagnosed with autism and is very active and lively. Eric doesn't notice the environment around him because he's enclosed in his own world. He doesn't speak. He only answers simple questions and repeats the questions addressed to him. During his lesson, the social worker is next to him. In his mental development, Eric doesn't lag behind his peers, but he doesn't communicate with the teachers and his classmates. We have had children with special needs, but an autistic child was new for me. He's a nice kid. We try to help him. The difficult part is that we cannot communicate with him. At first, he could sit in the class with his mother only for 10 minutes. She could hardly keep the child from running away. Nothing interested him in the classroom. You have to offer him something new all the time, something interesting that he hasn't seen. It simply requires a lot of effort from the teacher. It is quite often possible to overcome autism. Meanwhile, the child should have a chance to study. It is his right for primary education. The work of the group so far has yielded positive results. Now, with the help of a special teacher or social worker, he can participate in the classes for 1 to 2 lessons. At the instruction of his teacher, he will approach the blackboard, write something on it, and participate in the lesson. And now he communicates with his classmates. It is great progress for a child with autism. All this was lacking in September, and now we see this result. It is true, in this short time period, we already see positive results. Eric notices his classmates during the lesson. At the beginning of the school year, he didn't notice them and was trying to avoid participating in the lesson and communicating with the teacher. Now everything is better. Eric tries to participate in the lesson as much as he can, goes to the blackboard, answers the lessons.
Ծղվեց շատ ճիշտ է, դե արի ներկենք սիրուն, որ հանկարծ չնեղանա ութը մեզանից։
Ութը ճղվեց։
Ահա, սա որ գույնն է էր։
Ճղվեց։
Ինչ գույն ենք ներկում ութը։
Չճղվի։
Չի ճղվի, արի դե ներկենք ութը։
At first, we were concerned that the other children wouldn't accept these children because everyone has his or her needs. During the meeting with parents, we presented all the shortcomings, and both the parents and children understood that children with special needs create absolutely no problems. I can say it even helps the teaching process. The goal of this project is to include children who have difficulties in studies, such as children with mental disabilities, who can receive their education in the public school system. It gives them the opportunity to receive an education alongside their peers, not isolated from them. Today, 13 children study in the Makhatar Sabastadze complex in the Inclusive Education Program, 8 of them with disabilities. The law on education in the Republic of Armenia reads, "The education of children with needs for special educational conditions can be accomplished with the agreement of their parents, both in the public schools and in special schools with special programs. I very much like the term used in the law, children with needs for special educational conditions. That is not a child with special needs, but the conditions must be special that we can provide the child's development. Every child is a child, and by all laws, people have equal rights, including the right to receive an education. So let's create the conditions that will allow the child to develop, appropriate to its abilities. By inclusive education, we must first of all recognize education appropriate to the needs of the child, despite the fact of where the child is, in public education or a special school. The education process should be made appropriate to the child's needs. Inclusive education means that one should identify the educational needs of each child and find ways to meet them. Each child is an individual, and there is a minority of children for whom it is difficult both to reveal their educational needs and to satisfy them. In this aspect, to implement inclusive education means to facilitate that act, to have in hand the tools and mechanisms that allow you to reveal educational needs of the child and satisfy them. The Yerevan Derenik Demirjan School No. 27 understands how to meet special educational needs of children. The school has accepted children with disabilities for some time. Today, 23 children benefit from the inclusive education program in primary classes, among them 13 children with mental disabilities.
Սա մեզ ծանոթ պատկեր է, չէ՞, միրգա, տանձը միրգա, չէ՞։ Դու շատ ես չէ՞ սիրում տանձ ուտել։ Հիմա վերջնում ես տանձը ձեռքից ես ու դնում ես ճիշտ տեղը։ Ուշադիր նայ, որ ճիշտ դնես։ Ապրի Սեդրակը, շատ ապրես։
Sedrak is 9 years old. He is a second-grade student. He doesn't speak, but he listens and understands the words addressed to him. He has a problem with attention. When Sedrak entered school, he didn't express his feelings. He wasn't even interested in toys. Now, he is able to sit in lessons for 2 to 3 hours. At present, it is possible to teach him only by arousing his interest and focusing his attention on something. This will allow the child to display independent behavior and further develop later, but with some delay. As recently as 10 years ago, the law stated that there were some children who could not be taught. It seems that we have overcome that concept. All children can be taught. We must not forget that there is a large group of children who were said to be unteachable. Now we say that it is possible to teach them within the limits of their abilities. Mirijan is a 4th grade student. Due to infant stroke, he has muscle weakness and cannot write. He also has difficulty in speaking. Mirijan studies computer. He can compile text using Word and has made progress. He is rather capable. He can work independently. I can even give him a task and leave him alone, and he completes it independently. There is improvement. He has become faster. Bridge of Hope provided a special teacher and a primary school specialist who had special training to teach Mirijan in primary school. Through individualized work, it became possible to include Mirijan in classes and further develop his other abilities. What he could not write by hand, he learned to type on the computer. It makes his further education possible. By utilizing an individualized approach for each child, inclusive education also assists healthy children's education. Today, education in our schools is more teacher-centered. For example, the requirements for all children in this class are the same, whereas inclusive education encourages that strengths of the child are developed and the requirements to the child correspond to his or her capabilities, whether the child has a disability or not.
երեխան ունի այս կամ այն հաշմանդամությունը, թե չէ։
Here, the emphasis is not a special separate program, but on an individualized education plan, an individual approach. In this sense, inclusive education indeed brings new quality to general school education. And what does it mean to include the child in public school education? It means to train the teacher, the parents, the entire school staff so that they can organize the child's education by an individual education plan corresponding to the child's capabilities. This allows the child to meet the goals of his own individualized program and not general standards. Evaluation of the child is done by comparing the advancement over his initial abilities, knowledge and skills, and not to accepted standards. Bridge of Hope is a non-governmental organization, and the Ministry of Education and Science of the Republic of Armenia have signed an agreement on establishing inclusive education classes. The project has been implemented in 5 Yerevan model schools since January of 2003. The goal is to test and present to the ministry the results of inclusion of children with special educational needs into the public education schools with the aim of spreading this experience to other schools. In principle, I believe that this is a better approach, but the development of new methods for education in the education system requires a lot of preparatory work. The fact that it is being tested in schools since 2003 makes us believe that we are on the right path, but I think that we still have a long road to go to implement inclusive education throughout the entire country. The Ministry of Education and Science has developed and confirmed medical, psychological, and educational evaluation standards for children with special educational needs. At the beginning of the school year, a team of professionals, the principal, special teacher, social worker, parents, and if necessary, other specialists, addresses all the students of the school, studies their medical evaluations, and determines their educational needs. The team starts evaluating the children by observing their lessons. The teacher is the first to know if a child is having any problems. Through daily work, the teacher notes where a child performs poorly and what problems he or she has. There are children who learn at a faster pace, but there are also children whose learning is slow and they have problems. The observations go on for about 3 months. Following this period, I start to be more attentive to the child, and so does the special teacher, the social worker. The child may simply have communication problems. There are children who need to develop their thought process. There are children who are weak in mathematics, or who have problems with Armenian writing, or who have poor hand motor skills. It is a great achievement for the teacher to discover the problem. After that, we start discussing this case, start debating. I have to say that every discussion is accompanied with debate, because we do not state that this child simply has a problem and close the case. I give my opinion, the special teacher's hers, then the parents, because the parents know their child very well. At school number 27, a team of professionals evaluate the children's educational needs and decide, for example, that it is necessary to invite a deaf and dumb teacher for Sarkis. Sarkis is a second grader and has a hearing problem. He has learned to write very well. He can even read out loud. However, he does not know sign language and cannot read lips. Integrated education means bringing children with disabilities to where children without disabilities are, be it in the school, kindergarten, or different groups. It is something that persons with disabilities are trying to do for children with disabilities. Inclusion means that children with disabilities are among their peers without disabilities and participate equally with them in the process going on there. The National Educational Institute of the Republic of Armenia closely collaborates with the non-governmental organizations implementing inclusive education.
Ինստիտուտին կից գործում է հատուկ խորհուրդ, հատուկ
There is a special educational council attached to the Institute that deals with development of educational concepts and their evaluation. In this respect, we seem to have certain success. Special education programs for all subjects for grades 1 through 3 are ready. Some of the books have already been printed with the support of non-governmental organizations. One of the courses prepared for public school education, Life Skills, is already a part of the special education curriculum. Anahit studies in the 6th grade of school number 27. Up until the 4th grade, she attended a special school for children with hearing problems. There, she learned to read lips. It was much more difficult for Anahit in public school. At first, she was frustrated that she could not master her lessons. Her classmates helped her. Anahit's strengths were discovered through individual focus. She started to communicate.
Անահիտը սովորել է թույլի սովորների դպրոցում, դահատու դպրոցեր։ Իրեն շատ լավ է զգում դպրոցում։ Եվ գոհերի ուսուցիչներից։
Anahit studied in the school for children with hearing problems for 4 years. She was very comfortable there. She was happy with her teachers and her friends. She really liked her friends very much. To be honest, there were no problems. Simply, my priority was for her to speak better and to communicate with everybody. The main reason I brought her to this school was so that she could communicate more with speaking children. I thought it could help, and it really did. It's the 3rd year she is attending this school, and now she can even do shopping. It's not a problem for her. Everybody understands her. Last year, a council on the problems of the persons with disabilities was established, together with the National Assembly chairman, that discussed this draft law and many other issues concerning educational, medical, and cultural problems of persons with disabilities. We managed to develop the language of the legislation, and the law was introduced in Parliament. I believe the future, like in other developed countries, belongs to inclusive education. However, without excluding the existence of special schools, because there are children with disabilities who may have difficulties that cannot be resolved through inclusive education. Inclusive education requires additional efforts from all school specialists and a reevaluation of the experiences accumulated over the years. In 5 schools in the capital, the principals and teachers agreed to implement it for the sake of establishing harmony and a society of high morals and compassion. Their experiences will be used in other schools. However, inclusive education has its limitations. First of all, only those children should be accepted in schools who can help. To be honest, we are not ready to open the doors for all children. Not that we don't want to, simply our possibilities, skills, and abilities do not allow us to organize the education of such children in public schools. Inclusive education has been accepted in the world for a long time, and its implementation in Armenia is not a question of trends. It is one of the conditions in which Armenia will become part of the civilized world.
Գոյություն են մի շարք փաստաթղթեր միջազգային, որոնց Հայաստանը միացել է որոշակի պարտավորություններ։
There are a number of international agreements which Armenia has participated in and agreed to certain responsibilities. For example, Education for All, maybe one you have heard about. It obliges states to do everything possible to provide at least primary education for all children without discrimination of sex, race, national minority, and of course, first of all, disability segregation. There are other documents as well. For example, Dakar Document, Salamanca Declaration that concerns special education and inclusive education. The international experience in inclusive education is diverse. Different countries implement it in different ways. There are countries where children with disabilities are included immediately into public schools. In other countries, children attend separate classes in public schools. I think that the latter is not very successful and doesn't completely encourage a child's inclusion into society. It is most appropriate and realistic if one or two children with disabilities are in public school classes. This case is advantageous for both sides. The continuation of this project is dependent upon the acceptance of this idea by the government. That acceptance should be expressed in the legislative field. Today is not enough to say that we collaborate and implement the project. It is implemented with the support of international structures, in particular with the funding of NOVIP. What will happen after funding is over? It is here that the ministry, the government, should revise all its legislation. The Ministry of Education and Science now budgets the additional funding to schools for children who have special educational needs. We have the budget for the funding for ordinary students, and now we will also have the funding of special school students, and these two figures will allow us to see the difference. It will be clear that children without special needs will require annually a certain amount of state funding, and children with special needs a different amount. And after having these two figures, the next resolution should be adopted. That budget figure will change with the child, irrespective of the fact where he or she is. If there is no funding, we will by all means implement it within the framework of our budget, because we won't let go to waste all the achievements that we have made. These children are happy. We too are happy with them. This is a delight. It's not one-sided. Zarui is 8 years old. She studies in the first grade and attends our classes. Our goal is to integrate Zara in the studying process through the means of games. Her problem is that her mental development places her behind for her age. Let me say, I will soon go to the 5th grade. The experience of inclusive education implementation in Armenia is certainly a success. 68 children are included in the general school teaching process. No difference is made between children with and without disabilities. All children have equal conditions for realizing their educational rights. International research has shown that if the state does not provide education for persons with disabilities, they replenish the army of the poor, and poverty gradually increases in the country. To interrupt this vicious cycle, from poverty to disability and vice versa, perhaps the only way to stop it is through education, because by providing education to children with disabilities, we create a future for them, a bright future.